Don't know about you, but one of my favorite shows of all times to watch is Mythbusters. And so, Kevin, who's with me today, who runs our advocacy and outreach, myself, and Sam Paredes, the executive director of Gunners of California, decided we're going to do our own Mythbusters about CCWs. And why would we be doing this right now? Well, we're really excited because LA County, and honestly, people, I thought for years that hell would freeze over before I would ever live long enough to see LA County get CCWs. But Sheriff Villanueva has put together a fairly large size unit and is making sure that they can issue in a proper form. And so we're going to be talking about that and other myths that seem to reign throughout California about what CCWs are, how you get them, delays, what causes them, should you apply, should you not apply, black helicopters. Believe me, we have heard just about every myth possible. So I'm going to start it over to you, Sam. What's your favorite myth?
Oh my goodness. My favorite myth is that if you get a concealed carry weapons permit, is that you can't carry it everywhere in the state of California. Like you can't carry it in San Francisco or Marin County or the East Bay or Los Angeles or East LA where I grew up, and that is an absolute total myth. When you are issued a CCW by the law enforcement official who is issuing them in your jurisdiction, it's the sheriff or the chief of police, that is a permit that allows you to carry a firearm anywhere in the state of California. And it matters not where you go, you can carry it. There are some places where you are not authorized to carry a concealed weapons permit. Places like the state capitol and the park grounds, the offices of state elected officials, you can carry them to government meetings. Now, if they have a metal detector, that isn't at the Capitol, if you have to go through a metal detector, my advice to you is to go back to the car and take it off and not set out the bells and whistles. But the law authorizes us to do that. Now, if you go to some place like San Francisco, the only time that you can run into a problem is if you do something dumb. It's called a concealed carry weapons permit. That means you should keep it concealed. Period. No printing, no, gun checking. Oh, I got to check to see if it's police instantly know what you're doing when you're going to check your holster and your spare magazine. They see you and they understand that. Now, if you are carrying concealed and you need a firearm to protect yourself and your family in one of these places that are gun haters, counties, and you defend yourself successfully, hey, the consequences after that are going to be easy to deal with because you're alive and your family members are alive. And they say, we don't want you to get guns. You should have called the police. Well, you know what? They didn't have time to do that. But if you do something like accidentally brandish, you carry at the 6 o'clock position, you bend over and somebody sees you have a gun, or you unwisely load up when you're getting out of the car and somebody sees you and calls the police and they ask you, are you carrying a concealed firearm? You have to tell the truth at all times. And the only thing that the law enforcement officers can do is say, can I see your concealed weapons permit? And you give it to them. And they say, can I see your firearm? Yes. You have to give that CCW to them for inspection. But what they can do is they can say, okay, now you can take off your gun and unload it and lock it in your vehicle. And on your way out of town, you can stop by the precinct and pick up your CCW. Or we will mail it to your sheriff. So since you're not in possession of this CCW, you are not authorized to carry. And that's not a good situation, but that's the only thing they can do. And if you are appropriately concealing the firearm, there's no issue. There's no issue. Now, what's your favorite myth?
Kevin, I was going to let you go.
Well, yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily a myth per se, but I have heard, complaints about good cause statements. Why do I need to have a good cause statement? I want to, it's my constitutional right to carry. We work within the laws that we can work with, right? And I think something that's important for people to understand is that the majority of sheriff's departments out there want to help you with those good cause statements. I can tell you here in Orange County, they were extremely helpful in communicating with me. They want you to have that CCW, but as long as they're required to require something, they're going to require it. They don't have the option to necessarily say you don't need a good cause statement as somebody who's trying to get you your CCW. So that's, I guess, a myth that I would like to dispel. You know, these people want to put up barriers between us and getting that permit, when in actuality they're required to do it, and they want to help you do it by any means that they can.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I know when all three of us were at the CCW conference with the vast majority of Sheriff's Department, the people opening up the LA County unit were talking to us about that. And you know, one of the stories I shared was a couple of years back when I was going through a renewal. They have a lot of the people doing the renewal interviews, as you know, Sam, the same time that they have some newbies coming in to get them. And one of the people was a young lady, I would guess late 20s, early 30s, lived with her grandmother, and she had just put as her good cause Second Amendment. And yeah, the interviewer, the investigator, is like, he goes, "Oh, so you live with your grandmother? Do you ever go get medicine for her?" Yeah. Late at night? Yeah. Might you want to put that could be a problem? No, I'll just put Second Amendment. And he literally went through like 4 or 5 different examples from the interview. He can't write it for her. He can't make her do it. You know, and I heard this other guy in the room going, "God, he's not trying to help her." And I'm thinking, what are you talking about? He's doing everything he can to help her. And finally, she took a break. I was done with my interview, and I went outside. I said, "You know those things that the investigator was saying? Yeah, you might want to go put some of those down in your good cause statement." And say, "Oh." And then she did. And, you know, for all I know, she probably got it. But I think that's one of the myths that comes back, is that, you know, I get it's your Second Amendment right, but this is the system we live in. And, you know, as we've talked, Sam, this is such a state that, you know, our opposition, Brady, Giffords, everybody gives this state the A+ on having the most gun laws on anybody. They're like, quit trying to make it harder on yourself.
Well, yeah, not only that, I mean, there's a difference between what is and what should be. If you want to talk about to any of us on an individual basis on constitutional carry, I'm sure that it might differ than the laws and regulations that we have here in California, but we need to work with what is. And this is what is, so let's make it as easy as possible. Now, if we want to get to what should be, that's when we're going to enter a conversation about, you know, we need to elect better officials to make better laws, but for the time being, these people do want to help us. And if you actually go in and try, I think that you'll find that they really are trying to help you.
You know, my favorite myth is the one where, you know, we have people that will call us here and say, "Oh, I heard," in an insert county name is issuing CCWs, and our receptionist or one of us, if we get the phone, will say yes. And then they'll say, "Well, I'm really afraid of 2 things. One, if I apply for this, the government will know where I live," which I always want to pound my head into the wall and go, you have an address, you have a driver's license, you have a social security number, you have a medical ID card. Oh, wait, they already know where you live. The second thing that comes out of that is then they're frustrated. And why do I have to jump through these hoops? I should just be able to get it. And I always ask this question: do you vote? Which goes to the last statement you made. And invariably, 9 out of 10 times, they look at me and go, "No."
Yeah, too many times you get the answer no, and unfortunately, a lot of people have a tendency to complain when they're not actually participating.
Right.
You know, you guys made a couple of really, really good points there. People need to understand that the vast majority of sheriffs in the state of California will allow and accept for personal protection as the reason. As a matter of fact, in my rural county, the sheriff, when there were people who insisted they needed to put down some sort of a reason, and they want to know what is going to be acceptable, and the sheriff says, "Well, let's see, do you drive late at night on rural roads without lights, you know, which could be dangerous?" And they go, "Yeah." Well, that is true for every resident of the county. So if you feel you need to put down some sort of a reason, put that down. But the vast majority will accept for personal protection. And when you go in to have the interview with the officer who's conducting the CCW interviews, they just want to get a feeling that you are a good person, that you are not a jerk, You don't have an attitude, which you have the right to have an attitude if you want. But if you want a CCW, that's not what you do in front of an interview. They want to get a sense that you are a rational, law-abiding citizen. We don't like the laws, but those are the laws that we have on the books right now. So we have to. They're working with us under the constraints that they have, and we need to work with them. Hey, it's far more important for me to have a concealed carry firearms permit to protect my family and my friends and my travels and my home, in my business, than it is to try to make a political point with an interviewer who is trying to help me achieve that goal by giving me some hints on what has been accepted by their sheriff. Now, Rick and I and CRPA and Gun Owners of California, the more we work with sheriffs, the more they are coming to the conclusion that, it is a constitutional right. And because of Peruta versus San Diego and other decisions, self-defense is a totally acceptable criteria for wanting a CCW under the Second Amendment. And as long as that standard is there and we are a may issue, why don't you play to the may issue side and give them a reason to accept? I'm not saying that we're not against it. As a matter of fact, both our organizations believe that constitutional carry is truly where we should be across the nation, that if you're a law-abiding citizen, the Second Amendment is your concealed carry weapons permit. If you're a criminal and in possession of a firearm illegally, they ought to throw the book at you.
Right.
But that is where we are. That is the journey that we are undertaking. That is what we are trying to achieve. But in the meantime, as we make it easier for law-abiding citizens to get CCWs in California and in other states, take advantage of it, and don't beat us up because we're making it easier for hundreds of thousands of people to get CCWs. LA, this is a massive victory that they are issuing CCWs. They have millions of law-abiding residents in the county of Los Angeles. And we want to encourage people to avail themselves of that opportunity. If they make that decision to carry a firearm in order to be able to defend themselves in a terrible situation, we want to do everything we can to encourage you. Get the right training, go through the process, and then carry responsibly. Make sure that it's always concealed. Make sure that you're always safe with the firearm. Make sure that no one knows that you're carrying a firearm. Be aware of places where it might be unwise to take a firearm into because the law says that you can't. There are a few places like that. Army Corps of Engineers property, state prisons, post offices. Folks, we are not allowed to carry a firearm in a post office across the country. So park your car outside of the post office parking lot, because if the parking lot is under their control, we're not supposed to carry them. Carefully unload your firearm, lock it away, make it safe. Go in, conduct your business at the post office, and then come out, reload, and go on and enjoy your day. We don't want to give the government any reason to take the CCWs that they have given us by making a dumb mistake. So,
well, yeah, Sam, I think that might actually point to another myth, and that's that the buck stops with the politicians. You said it's a great victory. What's happening in Los Angeles with the CCW program, that I would agree, is an act of courage. He's going against the status quo for whatever reason that he is. The real victory, though, is in the consequences of that action, that courageous act. And the consequences are people are going to get CCWs in Los Angeles County. We as a gun-owning community need to continue and preach firearm safety and responsibility so that we can have evidence. And I think both of you know it's really tough to get a piece of legislation passed without evidence. It's really tough to win a lawsuit without evidence. So we are the ones who provide that evidence. And that's where the real victory lies, is when CCWs do start going out in Los Angeles County, and and we can see how the crime rates in LA actually react to that. We saw great signs with Sandra Hutchins putting her programs together in Orange County. I would hope and expect for the same, but it doesn't stop with the politicians and their decision. The buck really stops with us.
I think that's a good point. I think one of the things too you got to consider is that as people start to apply, and they've already been doing that in LA County, people are already getting granted CCWs. But one of the things we have to talk about too is bandwidth within the community. I mean, the process of getting a concealed carry weapons permit isn't just the application. It's not just the interview. And the one thing I will say on the interview that you touched on, Sam, pretty perfectly, but the one thing I would add is not every county, when you're reading a blog, whether you're going to our good friends, over at calguns.net and you're reading a blog, you got to realize that, 50 plus counties are issuing CCWs out of the 58, but not every investigator is told to look for the exact same thing in each of those counties. And so people in the county I'm from, I will tell them, hey, if you do a lot of hiking, you do hunting, you do something like that, take some of your pictures with you to that interview, because it's like Sam said, you're having a conversation with people that, the vast majority I've met generally want to help you get your CCW. They want to see you be successful. So if you show up to the investigator and go, hey, I go hiking up on, down here in Southern California, Mount San Gorgonio, and you have a picture of you on the trail, you have a picture of you when you're hunting, you have a picture of you, going to do stuff late at night, for a family member or something like that, or where you work in a bad area of town, whatever it may be. That just backs up that packet when you're seen with the interviewer. That helps them see your life, and it encourages them to be able to say, yeah, this is a great guy, great woman, and go ahead and make the issuing. But I think there are a couple of things that we've got to stay focused on, you guys, and I think you're going to agree with me, is one, we have 1 million, I'm going to say it again, 1 million new gun owners in California. And a good chunk of them are already trying to go through the process to get their concealed carry weapons permit, their CCW. But when you just think of that sheer number and you think of ranges, ammunition, firearms, that in of itself is a huge undertaking right now, because we weren't prepared for 1 million new gun owners, to be quite honest. And so that has slowed down some of the processes. And the thing we need you guys to do is don't immediately jump down a sheriff department's throat and saying, oh, it used to be 8 weeks to get a CCW, now it's 4 months. This proves once and for all that this person or that department is anti-concealed carry. That's not true. I mean, I'll take 2 counties I know that are well over the 25,000 mark, which is Orange and Fresno. That means on average, they have 13,000 interviews just in renewals a year. Now they get hit with, I think it was one of those 2 counties got something like 15, 16,000 new requests just in the last 6 months, which is great. I mean, Sam, you and I are like, yay. Yeah. But now you gotta look, they're not interviewing 13,000 people. They now have to interview close to 30,000 people in 1 year. Yeah. At a time where they've been cut on their budgets.
Yeah, it's the same thing with the ammunition. I mean, not only do you have the shortages in supplies or materials needed to make it, but these companies have to forecast. And this sheriff's department is really no different. They've forecasted for what they expect, and nobody can forecast for COVID. So there are plenty of reactions that we've seen from COVID that are boosting these numbers. So yeah, I mean, maybe a little bit of patience is required, and some of the sheriff's departments are trying to react as well as they can. I know that our great friends in Riverside County hired a lot of new people to process CCWs, and that is awesome. But yeah, budgets are being cut, and sometimes that's going to be difficult for other counties, which kind of, goes into the argument. Every county is different, but I know that a lot of them are trying, and sometimes it's just hard to keep up.
Folks, we thank you for tuning in this week. We'll be back later in the week, more on concealed carry permits throughout the state of California, and we'll have another conversation with Sam. But as always, like us, follow us, and remember, be safe, shoot straight, and fight back for your rights. We'll see you again.